welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to work on the next block in the Underground Railroad series. So this is part 3. I'm going to work on the North Star. I'm not doing these in any particular order. I'm just doing this one today because it's a little bit easier of some of the ones that are left, and I'm leaving tomorrow to go on vacation. So I thought it'd be a good one to work on today. Today I'm going to work on the North Star, and it's basically a star and a star. You also know it as the Sawtooth Star. This block dates all the way back to the 19th century. They don't have an exact date for it, but it's an older block. And of course, I love stars. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know that. But if you're new, I'm glad to have you here as well. And oh, by the way, if you are here for the first time or if you're returning, don't forget to check down below and make sure you're subscribed and hit that thumbs up button. It really helps and it's free. So I'll hope you'll do that for me. With the North Star, it kind of stands for what it sounds like. Obviously, they say the slaves used it to guide them towards the north. If you know a little bit about astrology, the North Star is one of the stars in the Little Dipper, and the handle of the Big Dipper points towards it. So if you ever see the Big Dipper, which I think is the easier one to find in the sky, find that and then look where it's pointing. And if you see a bright star, that should be the North Star, and then you should see a Little Dipper. So that's a little history on that. They also say that the North Star guided the boat captains who took the freed slaves from Cleveland to Detroit and across also Lake Erie to Canada to freedom. So pretty obvious. The block's name sort of explains itself. So one of the next upcoming blocks is also a boat. So I'm really excited to do that one, which will obviously is also self-explanatory. So let's get started on this block. Now, I know a lot of you picked up the Eleanor Burns Underground Railroad sampler book because that's kind of what I'm using, but her directions are a little bit different from the way I like to do things. So when I'm doing these blocks, I am making the blocks out of the book, but I'm kind of doing it on my own because I'm not following her instructions. I like to do my flying geese a certain way. I like to do, the way I sew things a certain way. You can certainly follow the directions in the book, or you can follow me, whichever you like, but that's why there'll be a little bit of a discrepancy. And this week was one of those when I was looking at the block versus the way I like to make things. So I'm going to tell you the way I did it. I'll show you the way I did it, and then you can pick and choose which way you'd like to. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. So let's get sewing the North Star. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the size of the pieces that I cut because they're different from the book. So I'm making the 12.5-inch block, or 12-inch finished. So the centerpiece is going to be a 3.5-inch square. And then instead of doing the flying geese the way that they're doing, I am doing them my own way. I'm being a rebel. And so I cut 4 2-inch by 3.5-inch, 2-inch by 3.5-inch background squares. And to make those flying geese, I cut 2 2-inch squares for each background rectangle. And I think I called that a square. It was a rectangle. 2-inch by 3.5-inch rectangles, 4 of those, and then 2 2-inch squares for each of those. So 8 2-inch squares and 4 2-inch by 3.5-inch squares. And then the center is a 3.5-inch square. So that's those pieces. Now the outside star legs, which will go around the center star that we're building, those, they also did a different method that I'm going to do. So I cut myself 4 3.5 by 6.5-inch rectangles. And then I cut 8 3.5-inch squares that are going to be the flying geese legs, or the wings. And then in addition to those fabrics, you also need 4 3.5-inch background squares and 4 2-inch background squares. And those are going to be around the stars. So we'll get to that in a minute. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these squares and set them aside. And I'm going to make my flying geese. So we're going to make these in the same fashion. And you're going to make 4 of each of these. So I'm going to just lay these on top. And you're going to draw a line corner to corner, or your favorite method for marking if you're going to follow my directions. And we're just going to sew from the top corner to the middle there on each of these to make these flying geese. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. Now I did not draw a line on this small one because I do have some seam guide tape on my machine, and the small one is pretty simple with the seam guide tape to do, or even you can even eyeball it because it's such a small piece. But on this piece I am going to draw the line corner to corner. So I'm going to use my favorite marking tool, so whichever one is your favorite. I like friction pens, but I know there's controversy with friction pens. But this part is going to be on the back. It's never going to be on the front of the quilt, so I'm not very worried about it. And I'm just going to line that up, and then I'm going to sew again top to the bottom. Okay, so I've got these two pieces, and I'm going to get out my scissors and clip those apart. And you can use your rotary cutter here or scissors, but I've been sewing a really long time, so I'm just going to trim this because I can pretty much eyeball a 1/4 inch and just cut that off. So we're cutting off the outside to the outside of where you sewed to make your flying geese. Now again, you don't have to do my method. You can do the kind that they do in the book where you get the flying geese from the squares. I just prefer this. I feel like my flying geese, for me, come out better. The other way is a little faster because you're doing multiple at a time, but this is the way I prefer. So, and we're going to go ahead and press these so we can add the other wings to our flying geese. Okay, so I've got those pressed, and I'm going to just do the opposite side just like we did this side. So I'm just going to lay these blocks or these pieces on top here, sewing from the middle corner to the bottom right, middle top corner to the bottom right. That one, and we'll do this one. And if you're pretty familiar with your machine, you might not even need to mark this large one. I didn't mark it this time, and it's pretty darn straight, so I'm okay with that. All right, so again, I'm going to trim these. Definitely feel free to use your rotary cutter and ruler. I'm okay with eyeballing, but you do not have to do that. Okay, there we go. All right, so now I'm going to press these guys. Close that up so I don't stab myself. And you're going to make 4 of each of these, don't forget. Alrighty. Okay, so all those guys are pressed. And let me grab these over here. So you should have 4 of each of these colors. And I've got some here that I've already made, just to save a little time, because I don't think you guys want to watch me sew flying geese for a half hour. So the next thing you're going to do after you make all your flying geese is to two of them, two on this, the smaller pieces and two of the large ones. Here's my other flying geese of that. Okay, you're going to want to add these little squares. So the squares that I put aside. So I'm going to take one more of these small guys and add the 2-inch squares to either side. And then I've got one of my larger ones that's already done as well. So I'm going to take one more of my larger pieces and I'm going to add the squares next to it. Okay, just like that. So you should have 2 out of the 4 that have the background squares added. And then after we get all that added, we can put the block together. Really simple block. Like I said, just a star and a star, sawtooth star. One of the basic blocks in quilting, so. And I'm just going to add the squares on both ends at the same time. I'm just going to finger press them out, and then once I'm done sewing them all, we'll take them to the ironing board. Give them a press. Okay. I have been asked a few times what fabric line I'm using. This is a line from Kansas Troubles of Moda. I'm sorry, I do not recall the name of the fabric line. I've had it for a little bit, and I took the tag off, so I don't remember it. But Kansas Troubles, Primitive Gatherings from Moda, Kim Deal, those are all good names to remember if you're looking for Civil War reproductions. And maybe you're someone that really loves these fabrics anyway, so you already have some in your stash, so that makes it really easy. But if you're someone like me who didn't really have a lot of these, a fat quarter bundle is a good place to start with some background fabric. Now, when I get the quilt all done, I'm probably going to have to purchase some more fabric for like the binding and depending on what I do with the sashing, that kind of thing. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and give these a press now. This is why I like to finger press, because if you finger press, which you don't have to, but the fabric goes where you want it to. It's kind of nice. Okay. So we've got all of our star legs made for the inner star and the outer star. So we're going to go ahead and start building this block. So I'm going to lay all these fabrics out here. So the first thing we're going to start with is the center star, of course. So I'm going to add these 2 star legs to the center piece. And I press the top and the bottom out. So this one I'm going to press in so they'll nest nicely. So I'm just going to finger press this for now and making sure that I didn't cut off my point, which I did not. A good way to make sure you don't cut off your point is if you sew from the flying geese side up so you can see where those threads cross, and you can stitch just this side of that X so you don't lose that point. Just kind of a good rule of thumb with flying geese. It's so easy to lose those points, especially on these little pieces. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and press this guy, and then we'll add that top and bottom piece to this. All right, that's looking pretty good so far. Okay, go ahead and add the top and bottom row. Making sure I didn't cut off my point, and it looks good. Now you can pin these if you like to make sure that you're nesting or that your pieces are fitting together correctly. I'm just kind of feeling as I go here over my seams to make sure that everything's nesting well. If you've got them pressed in opposite directions, you can feel where those threads kind of butt up against each other. And as long as they're right up against each other, you should have some nice lined up seams. Awesome. Perfect. Oh, the star looks really pretty. Of course, I love stars, period, but I'm not used to using these fabrics, and I'm really liking them, actually. Very classic for sure. Nice. All right, looks like our center star is pretty good. Make sure it measures correctly. It should be 6.5 inches square, which it is. So that's good news. That means I did something right. All right, so now all we have to do to finish this is to add our outer star legs, just like that. So I'm going to add the sides first and then the top and bottom. What a fun little block. Stars always make me smile. Tell me in the comments down below what your favorite block is. One that, like, you make it, and as you're making it, it just makes you smile. My favorite star is probably the Ohio star, but this block right here, the Sawtooth star, they really make me smile. They're just a happy block. Again, I'm sewing with the flying geese on top so I can make sure I don't cut off the points. Okay, and I'm going to press these guys in. So you want to make sure you didn't cut off your point here and you didn't cut off your little star points here. That one looks good. And that one looks good. And I'm pressing these in because I pressed these top ones out. So let's go ahead and press that. And the pen I'm using is the Acorn Easy Press Precision pen. It contains a kind of starch-like, but not starch, concentrate that you put right on your seams to get super flat blocks. So thought I'd say that just because I get asked in just about every video I use it in. If you want to see like a better demo of it and exactly what it does, I do have a video on my channel with that. So it really helps with these thick seams when you have a lot of points coming together, and just makes your block nice and flat, which I love, because then your piecing just comes out so much better. Okay, so, whoops, sorry, I knocked the camera a little bit. So I'm going to add our top and bottom piece here, and that will become our star. We're almost done. So this block will probably take you about a half hour to make. It's not too bad. The cutting goes really fast too, because there's not that much cutting in this. Again, I'm going a little bit slow because I'm matching up my seams, make sure everything nests, and I don't want to lose any of my points, so I'm going to go slow over that flying geese. And let's take a peek. Awesome, kept my points there. Wasn't sure about that one, but it made it. All right, we need our star to look like a star, right? Let's do the other side, and then we'll give this guy a press, and we'll be done. And I am taking a back stitch when I put these rows together. I don't typically do that when I sit down and do a whole quilt, but these blocks aren't going to be put into a quilt for a little while yet, and I don't want them to, you know, they're probably going to be moved around my sewing room a little bit. I don't want them to pull apart in the meantime. So if you have any projects like that, where they're kind of ongoing, like a block of the month or something like that, I do suggest when you have blocks and you're putting the final block together like this, where we're doing in rows, you may find that it helps to backstitch, even though that's not typically what we do in quilting, just so your blocks don't come apart in the meantime, because when you move them around a lot, they can start to kind of pull apart. So just from a long arm quilter's perspective, that's where I've seen a lot of issues with quilts. If there's been any issues, it's been like blocks coming apart at those places. So, all right, so we're just gonna give this guy a press, and then it'll be done, and we'll have our gorgeous North Star. So again, you can do it toward like the book's directions, or if you would like to do it my directions. I used 3.5 inch squares for the outer 4 corners. The outer flying geese were 3.5 inch squares for the print, so 8 of those. 4 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles. And then my center was made of 4 2 inch background squares, 4 2 inch by 3.5 inch rectangles, and the center is a 3.5 inch square, and then my star points were 8 2 inch squares. So that's the measurements again, if you're going to do it the way I did it instead of the way the book does it. All right, there's our square. Well, I hoped you enjoyed making that North Star along with me. Don't forget to tell me down in the comments what block makes you smile. I would love to hear that. This one definitely does. I love star blocks. Here it is again. Star and a star, the North Star, also known as the Sawtooth Star. Very, very beautiful. Excited to add it to the collection back there. Well, I hope you all have an amazing week coming up. I'll be gone out of town on a quilting cruise. It's my very first one. I'm very excited, and keep checking back on my channel because as long as I can get internet access, I plan to post some videos along the way, because I've never been on a quilting cruise, and I imagine a lot of you haven't either. So you might want to know what exactly happens on a quilting cruise, just like I do. So I'm excited to share that with all of you. So I'm going to try to do like a travel vlog. So I hope you'll come on over and join me for that. And then when I get back, we'll do the next block in this series. I'm not sure which one we're going to do yet, but I'll determine that the week after I get back, and then we'll have another video. So it'll be a couple weeks, but don't despair. I'll be back. All right, guys, thanks so much, and I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great week. Bye.